They called her a monster because it was easier than calling her a child. And when the village finally learned the truth, it was already too late to take back the hate. Stone Willow sat on the edge of human space like a stubborn pebble that refused to be kicked away. The hills were green, the air smelled of wet soil and wood smoke, and the people lived simple lives, farming, repairing, trading, surviving. But their memories were not simple. 20 years ago, the war had reached even this quiet place through screens, through radio screams, through the letters that stopped coming. Stone Willow had sent sons to fight and received ashes. The war ended on paper. Hatred stayed in the bones. That was why the girl was hated. Her name was Iria, and she was 12. She lived in a patched shelter near the tree line where the forest began to swallow broken metal. Her home used to be part of a cargo pod. Now it was a thin wall between her and winter. Her skin held a pale violet tint under sunlight, and faint silver lines rested along her throat like soft lightning trapped under the surface. They were not scars. They were Velith marks, born with them, not earned. To Stone Willow, those lines meant only one thing: enemy. Every morning, Iria walked into the village to collect water and ration bread from the public stall near the square. She kept her chin up and her steps measured. She had learned that running invited stones, and arguing invited fists. Her best defense was calm, like armor made of silence. Today, the square was busy. A wagon creaked past with sacks of grain. A dog barked at a chicken. A vendor shouted prices. Then the noise faded as Iria appeared on the road, and the village did what it always did, noticed her like a wound. A shopkeeper turned his sign to closed even though customers were still inside. A mother pulled her child behind her legs. A few men stopped talking and watched her with cold eyes that never blinked. "Monster," someone muttered. Iria did not look toward the voice. She focused on the ration stall, the metal pump, the line of people who suddenly found reasons to move away from her path. A boy, maybe 14, full of anger he didn't understand, picked up a stone and threw it. It hit her shoulder with a dull crack. Iria flinched, just once. She felt the sting bloom under her skin, hot and sharp. Her body wanted to curl inward, to protect itself like any living thing would. Instead, she straightened. She brushed dirt off her sleeve. She kept walking. That, more than anything, made them uneasy. If she screamed or begged, they could feel powerful. If she cried, they could pretend she deserved it. But her calm made them feel smaller than they wanted to be. On the far side of the square, Elias Rowe watched. He was new to Stone Willow, a man in his early 30s with a quiet face and eyes that held too many nights. The village knew him as a mechanic and generator fixer. He kept the power running when storms hit, repaired water pumps, and didn't drink at the tavern. To Stone Willow, that was suspicious enough. What they didn't know was that Elias had once fixed more than machines. He had served on evacuation crews. He had seen alien ships rise like dark clouds over burning cities. He had carried children who didn't breathe anymore. He had learned that survival demanded ugly choices, and then he walked away from that life because the ugliness never washed off. He saw the stone strike Iria. He saw her refuse to show pain. Something tightened in his chest, the part of him that still believed the universe could be fair if people tried hard enough. "That's not a monster," he whispered, though nobody stood close enough to hear. Iria reached the ration stall. The worker, a tired woman with grey hair, hesitated with the bread. Her hands hovered like she might drop it if Iria touched it. Iria spoke softly, carefully, in simple human words she had practiced for years. "2 rolls. Please." The worker slid the bread across without looking up. "Take it and go." Iria nodded. "Thank you." As she turned, a man stepped into her path. Olaf Drenner, broad-shouldered, weathered face, eyes like flint. People said he lost his son in the war. People said his grief turned to stone and stayed there. "You shouldn't be here," Olaf said. His voice was calm, but calm can be crueler than shouting. Iria held the bread in both hands like it was fragile. "I live here." Olaf's jaw tightened. "Not like us." For a second, the square held its breath. Iria's golden eyes rose to meet his. They did not plead. They did not challenge. They simply existed. I don't want trouble, she said. Olaf leaned closer. Trouble follows you. Elias took a step forward before he even realized he moved. His body remembered how to place itself between danger and someone weaker. But he stopped. He told himself he wasn't here to be a hero. He told himself he was done with that. Olaf finally moved aside with a small motion of his head, like allowing a stray dog to pass. Iria walked through without another word. She didn't see Elias watching. But she felt it anyway. She always felt eyes. It was the oldest kind of alarm system. She carried the bread and water back toward the tree line, past the clinic with the green round door and the faded red medical symbol painted by hand. Inside that clinic, Dr. Mara Klein was arguing again. Mara had found Iria 3 years ago, half buried in the wreckage of a refugee pod after it slammed into the planet's upper atmosphere and scattered like shrapnel. Iria had been a small, trembling thing then, clutching a broken metal shard like it was a piece of home. Mara reported it. The government answered quickly, coldly. Transfer the alien minor to federal containment. Classified asset. Non-human. Mara refused. She said Iria was a child. She said no child belonged in a cage. She used every favor she had, every argument, every signature. She won. Barely. Stone Willow got to keep its doctor, but Mara's record gained a warning mark. One more mistake, and the government could take her clinic, her license, her life. Today, the government came anyway. A black federal transport landed at noon, too sleek for the dirt road, too quiet for comfort. Inspector Rennick Hale stepped out wearing a clean coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He carried a data slate like it was a weapon. Dr. Mara Klein, Hale said, as if her name tasted unpleasant. Where is the Velith minor? She's not property, Mara replied. Hale's smile thinned. She is unregistered, unprotected, and under federal jurisdiction. She's sick, Mara said, voice tightening. She needs stability, not your opinion, Hale cut in smoothly. You have 48 hours to present a legally recognized guardian capable of ensuring containment compliance and physical protection. If you fail, the minor is transferred to relocation services. Relocation services, Mara repeated with disgust. Everyone knew what those centers were. They were warehouses for unwanted lives. Children disappeared there, quietly, legally, forever. Hale tapped his slate. The law is clear. I'll return tomorrow for your intent. The day after for your answer. He turned and left as if the decision was already made. That evening, Iria sat outside her shelter with a torn human book resting on her knees. The pages smelled like old paper and smoke. She didn't understand every word, but she loved the idea inside it, humans who stood up when they had no reason to believe they could win. Her fingers traced the silver lines on her throat absent-mindedly. Under those lines, deep inside her chest, slept something she did not fully understand, a living archive her people called a memory core. Her mother had hidden it in her before the escape, whispering with shaking hands, "Keep it safe. Keep it alive." Empires would kill for what Iria carried. Iria didn't want to be special. She wanted to be allowed to exist. Footsteps crunched softly on leaves. She looked up, alert. Elias Rowe stood at the edge of the clearing, hands open, posture careful. Not threatening. Not weak either. Like someone who knew exactly how violence worked and didn't want to use it. Iria stared at him for a long moment, reading him the way she read books, by what he didn't say. "You're the one who fixes machines," she said. Elias nodded. "And you're the one they keep calling names." Iria's lips pressed into a thin line. Names don't change anything. Elias took a breath, like he was stepping off a cliff. They might soon. The government's here. "I know," Iria said quietly. "They always come eventually." Elias's voice dropped. "You're not a monster." Iria's eyes didn't soften. "Then why does everyone need me to be one?" Elias had no good answer. Only the truth he hated. People needed monsters to excuse their fear. He swallowed. "If they take you, it won't be kindness." Iria closed the book. The forest wind moved her silver hair. "So what do humans do," she asked, "when the law is wrong?" Elias looked at the village lights in the distance, then back at the small alien girl who refused to cry. He answered the only way a human could. "They break it," he said. "And they build something better." In the dark, far beyond Stone Willow, a signal woke up, faint, hidden, alien. A searching pulse, old as the war, hunting for the last living archive. And for the first time in years, the galaxy's attention drifted toward one small village that thought it could stay invisible. Stone Willow had no idea what was coming. But humans had a talent the universe never respected until it was too late. They could turn hopeless odds into a plan. The signal crossed the dark like a whisper that refused to die. It slid through empty space, bounced off forgotten satellites, and finally brushed the edge of human territory. Old machines that had not been awake in years stirred. Ancient code recognized a pattern it was designed never to forget. The last Velith archive was alive. On Stone Willow, nobody saw the stars change. Life continued the way it always did, slow, cautious, pretending the universe was not watching. Elias Rowe did not sleep that night. He sat at his workbench, tools laid out with careful order, listening to the low hum of the generator outside his shelter. His hands moved on their own, checking power cells, sealing joints, preparing equipment he had sworn never to use again. He told himself it was just habit. Muscle memory. Old ghosts. But he knew better. Across the village, Iria lay awake as well. Her shelter was quiet except for the forest sounds creeping in through thin walls. She stared at the ceiling, fingers pressed lightly against the silver lines on her throat. They pulsed faintly, warm under her skin. That only happened when something far away was looking for her. Her mother's voice echoed in memory, soft and afraid. "If the stars begin to listen, hide. If you cannot hide, find humans who choose, not obey." Iria did not know why humans were different, only that they were unpredictable in a way empires hated. At dawn, Inspector Rennick Hale returned. This time, he did not come alone. 2 armored officers followed him, boots clean, faces blank. Their presence sucked the warmth out of the village square. Conversations died mid-sentence. Doors closed. Curtains shifted. Hale walked straight to the clinic. Mara Klein stood waiting. "You didn't waste time," she said. "I never do," Hale replied. "Have you secured a guardian?" Mara's jaw tightened. "I'm working on it." "That is not an answer." Hale tapped his slate. "You have until sunset." Iria watched from the edge of the square, heart steady, face calm. She had learned that fear made humans careless. Calm made them hesitate. A murmur spread through the crowd as Elias stepped forward. "I'll do it." Heads turned. Whispers sparked. Hale raised an eyebrow. "You?" Elias met his gaze without blinking. "Yes." "Your credentials?" Hale asked smoothly. Elias reached into his jacket and placed a small data chip on the slate scanner. The device hummed, then froze. Hale frowned and tried again. The slate went dark. "That's restricted," Hale said sharply. "So am I," Elias replied. The officers shifted, suddenly alert. Hale studied Elias more carefully now. The way he stood. The distance he kept. The calm that didn't come from ignorance. "You're off-grid," Hale said slowly. "No active service record. No visible rank." Elias nodded. "That's the point." Mara held her breath. Hale smiled again, but this time there was uncertainty behind it. "Even if I accept this arrangement, you understand what you're offering? Guardianship means responsibility. Control. If the asset becomes a threat." "She's not an asset," Elias said quietly. Hale's smile vanished. "Careful." Elias leaned closer. His voice stayed calm, but something dangerous lived beneath it. "You wanted someone capable of physical protection. I qualify." Silence stretched. Hale finally nodded. "Very well. Temporary guardianship pending tribunal review." 48 hours. He turned to Iria. Pack what you can carry. Iria looked at Elias. He gave a small nod. That was how the village watched the monster walk away with a human. The shelter didn't hold much. A blanket. A book. A small metal charm shaped like a broken star. Iria packed quickly, movements precise. Elias watched, noting everything she chose to keep, and what she left behind. "Do you trust me?" he asked as they walked back toward his workshop. Iria thought for a moment. "I trust that you decided." Elias almost smiled. The workshop was larger than Iria expected, filled with tools, spare parts, and machines that hummed with quiet purpose. The walls were thicker. The locks more complex. "This is safer," Elias said. "For now." Iria nodded, then tilted her head. "They are coming." Elias stiffened. "Who?" "The ones who built me to remember," she said softly. "They heard me." As if summoned by her words, the lights flickered. Far above Stone Willow, something slipped out of faster-than-light travel without ceremony. No bright flare. No warning. Just a shadow where there should have been stars. The Velith retrieval ship did not broadcast. It scanned. Inside the workshop, a console Elias hadn't powered in years came alive on its own. Alien symbols crawled across the screen. Elias cursed under his breath. "So it starts." "What?" Iria asked. "First rule of surviving bigger enemies," Elias said, already moving. "Never let them control the timing." He sealed the doors and activated a jammer buried beneath the floor. The air hummed, thick with interference. In orbit, the retrieval ship paused. Its scanners met resistance. That should not have been possible. On board, Velith operators exchanged sharp signals. Humans were not supposed to block this frequency. Humans were not supposed to know. The ship adjusted power, pushing harder. In the workshop, Iria cried out as the silver lines on her throat flared bright. She dropped to one knee, gasping. Elias was at her side instantly. "Hey! Stay with me." "They're pulling," she whispered. "They think I belong to them." Elias's jaw hardened. "You belong to yourself." He rerouted power, overclocking the jammer. Sparks flew. The generator screamed in protest. Outside, the village lights went out one by one. Stone Willow fell into darkness. People screamed. Children cried. Panic spread faster than fire. Inspector Hale's slate came alive with alerts. Power failure. Orbital anomaly. Unknown contact. "What did you do?" he whispered. Above them, the retrieval ship shifted position. And for the first time since the war, a non-human vessel crossed fully into human airspace without permission. The Velith had come to reclaim their treasure. They did not expect resistance. They had forgotten something about humans. Humans did not like being told who they belonged to. And Elias Rowe had already started planning how to make the galaxy remember that lesson again. Somewhere deep inside Iria's chest, the memory core awakened further, unlocking knowledge meant for civilizations far older than humanity. The monster the village feared was not dangerous because she was alien. She was dangerous because humans had decided to protect her. The jammer screamed like a wounded animal before Elias shut it down. The lights in the workshop flickered back to life, dim and unsteady. Outside, Stone Willow groaned as generators restarted one by one. People spilled into the streets, confused, afraid, staring at the sky like it had personally betrayed them. Iria lay on the floor, breathing hard. The silver lines along her throat dimmed from blazing white to a soft glow, like embers settling after a fire. Elias knelt beside her, one hand hovering, unsure where to touch without hurting her. "They're close," she said once she could breathe again. "Not just watching anymore." Elias nodded. He had already seen the data. The console showed a ghost of a ship in low orbit, masked but not invisible enough. Advanced. Clean. Confident. "They think this is a retrieval," Elias said. "Like picking up lost cargo." Iria turned her head to look at him. "My people stopped thinking of children as people during the war." Elias didn't answer. He stood and moved fast, opening panels in the walls, pulling out equipment that hadn't seen light in years. Compact weapons. Shield emitters. A small drone with patched plating and human code wrapped around alien parts. "You planned this," Iria said quietly. "No," Elias replied. "I planned for something like this." There was a difference. Humans survived on that difference. A sharp knock echoed through the workshop door. Not polite. Not patient. "Federal authority," Inspector Hale's voice called out. "Open immediately." Elias exhaled slowly and opened the door halfway, just enough to see Hale and 4 armed officers behind him. Their weapons were raised, but their eyes kept drifting upward, to the sky. "You felt it too," Hale said. "Didn't you?" "Yes," Elias replied. "What did you do?" Hale demanded. "I bought time." Hale's jaw tightened. "You violated at least 6 interstellar protocols." Elias shrugged. "Add them to my list." Hale glanced past him and saw Iria sitting up inside, watching silently. Something shifted in the inspector's eyes, not sympathy, but calculation. "That ship," Hale said, lowering his voice. "It's Velith." "Yes." They filed no contact request. No claim. No communication. "Yes." "That means they don't want witnesses," Hale finished. For the first time, Hale looked afraid. "They won't negotiate," Iria said calmly. "They will take me and erase the problem." Hale looked at her sharply. "Erase?" "Everyone who saw," she said. "Everyone who helped." The officers stiffened. "Ilias met Heles A's. Still think relocation services are the worst outcome." Hale swore under his breath. Years of protocol training warred with survival instinct. Finally, he did something no inspector was supposed to do. He made a choice. "What do you need?" Hale asked. Elias blinked once, surprised. Then he answered immediately, like he had been waiting for the question his whole life. "Authority to act. And for you to delay reporting." Hale hesitated. "If this goes wrong." "It will," Elias said. But going right was never an option. Silence stretched. Then Hale nodded. "You have 6 hours. After that, this becomes above my pay grade." "That's generous," Elias said. "Don't thank me," Hale snapped. "I'm not doing this for you." He glanced at Iria again. "I'm doing it because I'm tired of being told who deserves to exist." When the officers left, Elias sealed the door again. "You surprised him," Iria said. "He surprised himself," Elias replied. He turned back to the console, fingers flying. Old systems woke up. Networks that had been sleeping lit like constellations. Human code spread, messy and adaptable, wrapping itself around alien logic like vines cracking stone. "What are you doing?" Iria asked. "Calling in favors," Elias said. "And breaking rules." The Velith ship moved closer. In orbit, its commanders reviewed conflicting data. Human interference shouldn't work this well. Human technology was supposed to be inferior. Predictable. This was neither. "Deploy ground unit," came the cold decision. "Retrieve the archive." A single drop pod detached from the ship, burning silently through atmosphere. In the forest outside Stone Willow, it landed without a sound. 3 figures emerged, tall and slender, armor shimmering with adaptive light. Their movements were precise, emotionless. Not soldiers, collectors. Inside the workshop, Iria stiffened. "They are here." Elias handed her a small device, warm from use. "If things get bad, you run. This will mask you for 3 minutes." "I won't leave," she said. Elias met her gaze. That wasn't a request. Before she could argue, the outer alarm screamed. The collectors hit the door like a storm. Metal warped. Shields flared. Elias fired first, not to kill, but to disrupt. Human weapons were crude, but they were creative. The blast sent a collector slamming into a wall, armor scrambling to adapt to damage it had never been trained to understand. They adapt fast. Elias shouted. So do humans. Iria shouted back, surprising herself. She pressed her palm to the console. The silver lines along her throat flared again, brighter than before. Symbols flooded the screen, knowledge pouring out, ancient and vast. Elias stared. You can control it. I can ask it questions, Iria said, voice strained. It answers. Then ask how to stop them. She closed her eyes. The memory core responded. Outside, the collectors advanced again. One raised a weapon aimed not at Elias, but at the village beyond. Iria gasped. They'll burn everything. Distraction. Elias didn't hesitate. He rerouted power from the shields to the drone and sent it screaming through the wall, detonating between the collectors in a burst of electromagnetic chaos. Human ingenuity was not clean. But it worked. The collectors staggered. One fell. The other recalibrated. Faster now. In orbit, the Velith ship shifted weapons online. That was when the sky changed. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, old patrol craft, civilian retrofits, anything that could fly. They weren't authorized. They weren't coordinated. They were there because Elias's call had gone out to people like him. People who had disappeared. People who had walked away but never stopped watching. Stone Willow looked up in shock as human vessels formed a loose, defiant line between the village and the alien ship. The Velith commanders hesitated. Humans were not supposed to unite this fast. Inside the workshop, Iria opened her eyes. They don't understand you, she said softly. Elias smiled grimly. That's always been their problem. The collectors retreated, pulling back toward the forest as orbit filled with human signatures. The retrieval had failed. For now. Above Stone Willow, two civilizations stared at each other again, one ancient and certain, the other young and unpredictable. And the galaxy remembered something it had forgotten. Humans did not need permission to protect what they chose to love. And Iria, the girl once called a monster, was no longer alone. She was defended. The Velith ship did not fire. That silence was more frightening than any weapon. Above Stone Willow, human vessels held position, mismatched in size and age, some patched with visible welds, others bearing faded insignias from units that officially no longer existed. They formed no perfect formation, no clean line. They were uneven, messy, human. Inside the Velith command core, logic spiraled. This was not how humans were supposed to respond. There had been no declaration, no treaty breach, no time for coordination. Yet here they were, arriving not as a fleet, but as a decision. Withdraw and reassess, the Velith commanders concluded. Not because they feared destruction, but because unpredictability was the one variable even ancient civilizations learned to respect. The retrieval ship backed away, slipping into higher orbit. Its ground collectors vanished into the forest, dissolving into light and silence as if they had never been there. Stone Willow exhaled as one. People stepped into the streets, staring at the sky, whispering names for what they had just witnessed. Some prayed. Some cried. Some stood very still, realizing the universe had brushed past their lives and chosen not to erase them. Inside the workshop, Elias finally let himself sit down. The adrenaline drained from his body, leaving behind exhaustion that reached into his bones. His hands shook now that they were allowed to. Iria watched him closely. You stayed, she said. Elias laughed quietly. So did you. She hesitated, then asked the question she had been holding since the first stone hit her shoulder. Why? Elias leaned back against the wall, eyes on the ceiling. Because someone once stayed for me. And because I didn't deserve it any more than you do. That answer satisfied her more than any promise could. Inspector Hale returned an hour later, alone. His uniform was wrinkled, his confidence chipped at the edges. He looked older than he had that morning. They're gone, he said. For now, Elias replied. Hale nodded. High Command is asking questions. I haven't answered yet. Iria looked at him. They won't protect the village. No, Hale admitted. They'll protect borders. Optics. Politics. And you? Elias asked. Hale met his gaze. I saw what happens when we follow rules written by people who don't bleed. That was as close to an apology as Elias expected. I can file a report, Hale continued. Equipment malfunction. Sensor ghosts. No confirmation of alien presence. And the girl? Elias asked. Hale looked at Iria. Not like a file. Not like a threat. Like a person standing in front of him. She becomes invisible, he said. At least to us. That night, Stone Willow changed in quiet ways. Old Martha left a bowl of stew near the workshop door and walked away without knocking. The baker fixed a second loaf and said it was a mistake. A child left a carved wooden bird on the step and ran. No apologies were spoken. But fear began to loosen its grip. Iria noticed. Why are they doing this? She asked Elias as they sat outside, watching the stars return to their usual patterns. Humans are bad at admitting they're wrong, Elias said. But we're good at adjusting when reality punches us in the face. Iria smiled faintly. Days passed. The human ships did not leave orbit right away. They lingered, rotating crews, sharing information in bursts of encrypted chatter. The Velith ship stayed at a distance, watching, learning, waiting. Inside Iria, the memory core continued to wake. At first, it showed her fragments, star maps older than human history, equations that bent space, stories of her people before the war hardened them into something cruel. She shared what she could with Elias, who recorded everything, translating alien logic into human frameworks. She's not a weapon, Elias told the others when questions came. She's a library. And libraries, someone replied over the channel, are worth defending. On the fifth night, the Velith sent a message. Not to the fleet. Not to Earth. To Iria. Her silver lines glowed as the transmission bypassed all human systems and whispered directly into her nervous system. Voices layered over each other, calm, ancient, absolute. You are property of the Velith continuum. Return, and you will be preserved. Iria trembled but stayed standing. I don't belong to you, she whispered. You were created to carry us. I was born, she replied. And I choose. The transmission cut abruptly. Moments later, Elias's sensors screamed. They're powering weapons, someone shouted over the channel. The Velith ship surged forward, shields flaring. Human vessels reacted instantly, not with precision, but with instinct. They spread out, not to attack, but to block. To place themselves between Stone Willow and annihilation. Elias grabbed Iria's shoulders. Listen to me. If this turns bad. She shook her head. It doesn't have to. She stepped forward, placing both hands on the console. The memory core blazed, brighter than ever before. Information poured through her, not as commands, but as possibilities. She saw how the Velith thought. How their certainty made them fragile. She sent something back. Not a weapon. A truth. Across the void, the Velith ship faltered. Its systems stuttered as alien minds received data they had buried long ago. Records of their own atrocities, their own lies, proof that the war they blamed on others had begun with them. The ship's weapons powered down. Silence returned, heavy and stunned. After a long moment, the Velith ship turned away. This time, it did not linger. The human fleet remained until sensors confirmed the stars were empty again. Stone Willow would never appear on a map. It would never be famous. But it had been the place where something shifted. Iria slumped forward, exhausted. Elias caught her before she fell. You did it, he said softly. She shook her head. We did. Weeks later, life continued. Iria attended lessons in the clinic. Elias taught her machines. Mara laughed more. Inspector Hale requested a transfer and never explained why. And somewhere far away, alien civilizations quietly revised their assumptions. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the oldest. They were not the most advanced. But when a child was threatened, when injustice wore the mask of law, when the universe expected obedience. Humans chose defiance. And the girl the village once called a monster became the proof that the galaxy had been wrong about them all along. The galaxy did not forget Stone Willow. It tried to. Governments buried reports. Fleets deleted logs. Officials used words like anomaly and misunderstanding. But stories have a way of slipping through cracks, especially human stories. They traveled in half-whispered conversations between pilots, in encrypted messages passed from one retired soldier to another, in quiet questions asked by people who had seen too much to believe in clean lies. A small village had stood in the way of an empire. And the empire had stepped back. Weeks passed. Then months. The human ships finally left orbit, one by one, peeling away like guardians who trusted the night to stay quiet, for now. Stone Willow returned to its routines. Crops grew. Machines broke and were fixed. Children laughed again in the square, though they glanced at the sky more often than before. Iria no longer walked alone. She still collected water. Still carried bread. But now, when she passed through the village, people made space instead of walls. Some nodded. Some looked away in shame. A few smiled, uncertain but trying. No one threw stones. That mattered. Elias watched these changes from a distance. He never pushed the village to apologize. Humans rarely needed to be forced into doing the right thing twice. Living with what they had almost done was punishment enough. Inside Iria, the memory core rested again, quieter but not silent. It no longer burned with urgency. It waited. "Will they come back?" she asked one evening as she and Elias sat outside the workshop, watching the stars crawl slowly across the sky. "Yes," Elias said honestly. Iria nodded. "I thought so." "But not the same way," he added. "They learned something." She looked at him. "What?" "That humans don't give things back once they decide they're responsible for them." She smiled at that. The Velith response came not with ships, but with words. A single envoy arrived weeks later, unarmed, slow, visible. No stealth. No threat displays. Just a vessel that asked permission before entering orbit. Inspector Hale, now reassigned but still listening, sent the message straight to Elias. "They want to talk," Hale said. "Specifically, they want to talk to her." Iria listened calmly as the message played. "They're afraid," she said after a moment. "Of you?" Elias asked. "Of what I represent," she replied. "A choice they can't control." The meeting was held in orbit, aboard a neutral station long abandoned and hastily reactivated. Humans arrived with caution. Velith arrived with humility, which unsettled everyone more than aggression ever had. The Velith envoy was old, its voice layered with decades of certainty that had finally cracked. "You carry our history," it told Iria. "Our mistakes. Our shame." "I carry stories," Iria replied. "What people do with them is their choice." The envoy studied her. "You have changed the trajectory of conflict." Iria shook her head. "No. I just refused to disappear." Silence followed. Then the Velith did something no one expected. They relinquished their claim. Not just on Iria. On all living archives. They released records. Opened sealed truths. Admitted, publicly, that the war had begun with them. That fear had made them cruel. That control had seemed easier than trust. The galaxy reeled. Empires did not apologize. Civilizations did not confess weakness. But the Velith did. And everyone knew why. Because a human village had taught a child she could choose who she was. Stone Willow never became famous, but it became important. Quietly. Permanently. Refugees passed through more often now. Human, alien, mixed. Mara expanded the clinic. Elias built better power grids. The village learned that coexistence was not something declared. It was practiced. Daily, imperfectly. Iria grew. She learned human math and Velith science. She learned that anger could be fuel, but kindness could be armor. She learned that humans argued constantly and still stood together when it mattered. One night, as she folded a paper bird with Elias, her technique finally better than his, she asked, "What happens to me now?" Elias thought carefully before answering. "You become whatever you decide. And we deal with the consequences together." She placed the finished bird on the table, wings wide. "That sounds very human." Elias smiled. "It is." Far away, in councils and star systems that had once dismissed humanity as reckless and loud, new rules were written. Not laws. Assumptions. Humans were not ignored anymore. Because the galaxy had learned something it should have known all along. Humanity did not win wars by being stronger. They did not survive by being obedient. They endured because when faced with impossible choices, they chose to protect the smallest, quietest voice in the room. And sometimes, that voice changed everything. Iria stood on a hill overlooking Stonewillow as the sun set, their light painting the world gold. She was no longer the monster the village feared. She was the truth they learned too late to deny. And the universe, watching from afar, adjusted its calculations. Again, because humanity had proven, once more, that when it mattered most, they were exactly who they claimed to be. Human. And unstoppable.